As president of the League of Oregon Cities, it is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the League's Gubernatorial Forum. The League of Oregon Cities was founded 89 years ago to provide for the collective well-being of Oregon cities through education, information, research, and advocacy. The League is comprised of all 242 of Oregon's cities. The League is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse candidates. Cities are Oregon's economic engine. 70% of Oregonians live in cities where 80% of the state's income taxes are generated. Approximately 80% of employment is within cities. Projections have 76% of Oregonians living in cities by the year 2020. Cities provide the largest share of law enforcement at well over half of the law enforcement officers in the state. At times, cities are the only providers of 24-hour police services in many parts of the state. All of the state's colleges and universities are in cities, as well as 59 of the 60 hospitals and 28 of the 30 private colleges. Cities are where Oregon's social and economic activity and community take place. We appreciate the participation of the gubernatorial candidates in this forum. Their interest in cities reflects the importance of a healthy working relationship between the state and cities on behalf of Oregon's citizens. Before turning the forum over to our moderator, I would like to introduce the moderator and the candidates. Mike McCarty is the Executive Director of the Association of Washington Cities. Mr. McCarty has been with AWC since 2002 and previously served as City Administrator and Director of Community Development for the City of Shelton in Washington. We appreciate his joining us today and his willingness to serve as our forum moderator. It is also my pleasure to introduce the gubernatorial candidates participating in today's forum in alphabetical order. They are Aaron Auer, Constitution Party; Chris Henry, Progressive Party; Governor John Kitzhaber, Democratic and Working Families Party; Jason Levin, Pacific Green Party; and Representative Dennis Richardson, Republican and Independent parties. We appreciate your joining us today. Please join me in a round of applause to welcome these candidates. And I will now turn the forum over to Mr. McCarty to proceed.
Thank you, President Ron. It's my pleasure to be back here again. You know, I was here 4 years ago when Mike McCauley called me about a month or so ago and said, "Would you mind doing this again?" I said, "Mike, it can't have been 4 years. Where did the time go?" But frankly, I enjoyed it last year, or 4 years ago, and I know that we'll have a great forum today. My wife and I have been kind of pseudo-Oregonians for a long, long time. We started to vacation at Mount Bachelor, of course, and out on the beaches when our kids were really young, and discovered that Oregon is truly one of the best places in the world to vacation and to live. So you live in a great spot. Now, I do have to temper that a bit. And that goes to whenever the Cougars, and maybe a little bit the Huskies, play the Ducks and the Beavers. But that also is tempered by age, and I've come to realize that all things can be tempered by great Oregon Pinot Noir. So thank you very much for that gift. So the League invited all 6 candidates to the forum today, but unfortunately one was unable to join us. And I would like to go over the format for today's forum. The order in which the candidates will make statements or answer questions was determined by random drawing. The questions and the League's 2015 legislative policy priority position papers were provided to the candidates in advance, and they are intended to allow for a fuller development of their positions and understanding of the issues of greatest concern to cities. The purpose of the forum is to advance the understanding of the candidates of city issues. Cities and state government serve the same constituents, though their roles are different, but they are complementary. Today's purpose is not to surprise candidates or to focus on candidate views, but we are interested in hearing how each candidate would propose to address those important issues before them as they move forward in the 2015 legislative session and for the common good of all Oregonians. The format will be as follows. Candidates will have 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Candidates will be asked 4 questions, and the order of response will rotate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. At the conclusion of the questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 3-minute closing statement. All candidates should be directed to the question and not to another candidate. We're interested in your position and your approach, and not necessarily in your view of the opponent's approach or position. To respect the need to give each candidate an equal opportunity to answer questions and to make their statements, candidates will be asked to stop should they exceed the time limits. A random drawing was held to determine the order of the presentation, and that order will be rotated for the questions. The order of opening and closing statements will be the same. Timekeeping will use red and yellow cards to signify a 15-second warning on the yellow card, and to stop when both the red and the yellow are displayed. So the order of candidates for the opening statements will be Mr. Henry, Mr. Levin, Mr. Auer, Representative Richardson, and Governor Kitzhaber. So I invite Mr. Henry to begin with his opening statement.
Hello, I'm Chris Henry, and I represent the Progressive Party of Oregon. And I'm here because there is no Measure 90. I'm starting an opening with Measure 90 to emphasize the fact that if Measure 90 passes, you're only going to see 2 candidates up here. You won't see other views being expressed. So with that, I would ask you to consider to look more in depth at the top 2 primary, because it limits voices. It doesn't expand the field of voices that you're going to hear. With that, I've been a Green Party member for about 10 years, and I switched from the Greens in 2010. And I've been on the Progressive Party ballot now twice. I ran for U.S. Congress twice in 2008 and in 2010. And then the last session, I ran for Attorney General. And it was an interesting thing when I found out that I was the only truck driver on the ballot at the time. For whatever reason, the rest of them were attorneys. Go figure. But people asked me how I would govern and how I would handle that, and I said, well, there are plenty of DAs underneath me, so I would operate it as sort of an administrative position and chart its course. With this race, as in that race, if I were to win, obviously, it would be a steep learning curve. I'm working on my bachelor's degree. I've been working on it for a long time, so I'm still a student. I attend Portland State University, and I'm closing things up at Clackamas Community College. Being a truck driver and running for office, it has gotten in the way. So it's been a struggle to keep the grades up and whatnot, but I want to continue on and work on public policy. And with that, I'm a truck driver. My dad was a truck driver. My grandfather was a truck driver. Ergo, I drive trucks. But as a truck driver, I'm also a Teamster, and I believe in unions. The League of Oregon Cities, that's a union. There's nothing more American than there being unions. So I'm going to advocate for working people. And I think you can understand this from the perspective of the League of Oregon Cities, and I thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Mr. Levin.
Hi, my name is Jason Levin. I'm the Green Party candidate for governor. I'm running because I want to bring trust back to Salem. I'm running because I honestly believe that I can do a better job. I'm running because I want my children to know that you don't have to settle for less. I think we've heard a lot about Cover Oregon and the problems with Cover Oregon. I would like to institute a single-payer universal health care system for all legal residents of the state. I believe that healthcare is a linchpin to a stronger economy and a happier population. Once people can retire without fear of losing their benefits, an entire generation of young Oregonians will find themselves in demand. If people can leave a job to start their own business without worrying about furnishing healthcare for their family or healthcare for their employees, we will see growth in our economy. I want to help repair our overburdened educational system by breaking up the large, overburdened, over top-heavy school districts into smaller, more efficient entities. I want to bring back voc ed education. I think that instead of sending people off to take out student loans and get in debt to fund for-profit institutions like Le Cordon Bleu, ITT, the Art Institute, and others, we should be furnishing our young people with those skill sets they need to be skilled laborers and to get apprenticeships fresh out of high school. Not everyone is going to college, and not everyone should go to college. I believe in legalization of marijuana for the state of Oregon. It is a job creator. It will allow us to grow industrial hemp, which will create jobs and add an untold amount of money to our state economy. Finally, I'm focused on jobs. If we can institute single-payer health care, if we can fix our overburdened educational system, if we can legalize marijuana, that will all create jobs for the people of Oregon. And I know in all of the cities represented in this room, jobs are a primary concern. And that is basically it. I know a lot of times people will go on longer than they need to, but I am, in some respects, a man of few words, and so I will yield my time to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Mr. Auer.
Well, you got a hand applause for that. Aaron Auer, the candidate for the Constitution Party of Oregon, life, liberty, and limited government. And the first thing I'd like to say is I love Oregon. I love all Oregonians. That's what I was taught by my family. And I was raised on a dairy farm. My father and grandfather produced the highest quality raw milk in the state of Oregon, and I'm very proud of that. I'm here because I've discovered we have two statues on our state capitol grounds. A man on a horse with Bible in hand, the circuit rider preacher. It was dedicated in 1924. The governor of Oregon, Walter Pierce, who was a Democrat, received it, honoring the pioneer preachers. And there's an inscription there that reads this: commemorating the labors and achievements of the ministers of the gospel, who as circuit riders became the friends, counselors, and evangels to the pioneers on every American frontier. And thank God for that mighty monument, that we never forget our heritage. And when I witnessed that there, April 16, 2007, at a rally, many Russian and Slavic people were attempting to wake us up, Oregonians and the nation, that if we don't return to our heritage, they knew what happened to their nation. We must return to our roots and the God of the Bible, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And to have a circuit riding preacher statue 100 paces off the east steps of the Capitol, the preachers and the statesmen in one accord giving honor to our great heritage. And it began with this man right here, He-Ho-Kastikan, and I just love to always give honor to Native Americans that were here in their quest for the Book of Heaven, where they walked nearly 3,000 miles round trip in 1831 and 2, showed up at the doorstep of General Clark, making requests, we're here for the Book of Heaven, because Creator had been given many dreams and visions to Native Americans about a book coming and a race of people with light white skin to bring that book. And so when the nation heard about it, thank God it was circulated in good journalism of the day, good reporting, and the nation handpicked its finest, Jason Lee, Oregon's first missionary. And out of that Oregon mission with those first 5 starting trailblazers. That's who they were. This is the trailblazer state, and the education of Oregon came out of that Oregon mission with those Indian children, which is now Willamette University, the first and oldest university west of the Rocky Mountains. We're proud of that. And even the forming of the provisional government there at Champouy, Jason Lee was the chairman and the missionaries the trustees. And so we need to return to our roots, and God bless you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Auer. Representative Richardson.
I'm Dennis Richardson. I'm the Republican and the Independent Party nominee to be the next governor for Oregon. I'm the son of a carpenter, a union man who taught me to work hard and to not quit until the job is done. I enlisted in the Army and flew helicopters in Vietnam, and after returning home, I met Kathy, who helped me get a new purpose for my life. Kathy's here with us today. We've been married 41 years, and we have 1 son and 8 daughters, so we know how to stick with it during hard times. I served on the Central Point City Council and learned the importance of local government, how citizens come forward with problems, whatever they might be, and they don't want to really be there, but when they come before the leaders of their city, they want answers. They want common sense. They want action to take place, and as a city councilor, you hear about it in the grocery store and at the gas stations, and it was a great opportunity for me. But what I also learned was that the state repeatedly would send down to our city unfunded mandates, orders of things that we were supposed to do without the money to do them. One day I told the mayor that I've had enough. I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to go to Salem. I'm going to become a legislator and see what can be done to stop these mandates that are draining the lifeblood from our local cities. I ran in 2002 and was elected to the State House of Representatives. The next term after that, I was unanimously elected by the Democrats and the Republicans to serve as Speaker pro tem. And then ultimately I became the co-chair of Ways and Means, where we were able to work across the aisle and craft a balanced budget during the Great Recession and do it without raising taxes. After serving in the legislature for 11 years, I'm now coming before you to ask for your support and your vote to become the next governor of the state of Oregon. This campaign isn't about a Republican versus a Democrat. It's about the past versus the future. Under the current governor and the 3 terms that we've had high unemployment, higher than the national average for the last 18 years. We're talking about 200 months of being higher than the national average in unemployment. What that means is we don't have enough jobs. There's always discussion about more taxes, but we don't need more or higher tax rates. We need more taxpayers. We shouldn't be exporting our kids to other states to get a decent job. We should be exporting products and services to other states and other countries so that we can expand our economy. We have low student achievement. We're next to last in graduation rates. We have unprecedented fraud, waste, and abuse of taxpayer trust with the notorious Cover Oregon and the CRC projects.
You need to close, Representative.
Oregon deserves a governor who will reboot our economy, reform education, and restore trust and confidence. With your leadership and with your vote, I can be that governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor Kitzhaber.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the League of Oregon Cities sponsoring this event this morning. My political career has been based on one central belief, and that's the belief that at the end of the day, all of us want the same thing, whether you're a Republican or Democrat or whatever party, no matter where you live or what you do. I think all of us want to be able to meet our basic needs and those of our families. We want to believe that we have the opportunity to achieve our full potential. We want hard work rewarded with a better life, and we want to leave our children better off than we were. I think there are 2 basic views on how you accomplish that. One of them starts with the assumption that we're pretty much on our own, that we have to fend for ourselves, and if we're lucky, we make it, and if we aren't, we don't. There's not a lot of room for community, I think, in that worldview, and it creates false choices, like the false choice between a healthy environment and a strong economy. The other view is based on the belief that we're all in this together, and that there actually are things we can do as a community, as a society, and indeed as a state government to lift us all up. And I mean all of us, regardless of race, income, gender, home language, or sexual orientation. I believe in the second view, and I've fought for that my entire career as an emergency room doctor, as a legislator, as a governor, and I fight for it every day as a father. That's why I ran in 2010, and that's why I'm running again today. Now remember, if you will, the circumstances we found ourselves in 4 years ago. Very polarized state, high unemployment, divided legislature, huge budget deficit. The ingredients that I think many people thought would lead to the kind of political disaster we saw in Wisconsin. And the fact that that didn't happen, I think, speaks to the kind of executive leadership we needed 4 years ago and that we still need again today. Because I saw an opportunity, a moment of opportunity in this challenge, but it required us to throw away the political playbook, cross the partisan divide, and not shy away from the challenges that faced us. And that's exactly what we did. And that's what we've been doing together for the last 4 years. In 2011, we balanced the budget with bipartisanship, not rancor. We made significant changes to our system of health care and public education, and we've exceeded our job creation objectives. A year ago, in the shadow of the shutdown of the federal government and chaos in Washington, D.C., we had a 3-day special session in which we raised new revenue for schools, mental health, and senior services, reduced the cost of our state pension system, and provided tax relief for small businesses, all with bipartisan votes. And earlier this year, I personally negotiated a stand down between business and labor to reduce some very divisive measures from the November ballot that would have repolarized the state. So here we are. We have an open playing field ahead of us. We've taken on some very difficult challenges over the past 4 years, and we did not tear ourselves apart because we did it together. So I'm very proud of what we've done over the last 4 years. I'm very excited this evening, and this afternoon, been a long day already, to have a serious conversation about the remaining challenges and how we're going to face them together. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you all for your opening statements. So we're going to move into the question round. And just to remind you that you have 2 minutes. And so do kind of keep your eye out on the yellow folder, especially, to give you the signal to wind down or your 2 minutes. So the first question regards home rule. The Oregon Constitution grants home rule authority so that local voters would have control over their own destiny. The principle is that local governments should be able to respond to their citizens by making local choices and having the authority to implement them. Preservation of local control is the founding principle that brought the cities of Oregon together to form the League of Oregon Cities. Well, that principle has come under attack lately as the legislature has enacted preemptions of that local authority. So we're interested in knowing your position on preserving local control, on issues such as the authority of cities to manage their own rights-of-way and recover costs for its use, gun control, medical marijuana dispensaries, and sick leave. The order of the candidates will be Mr. Levin, Mr. Auer, Representative Richardson, Governor Kitzhaber, and Mr. Henry. So I invite Mr. Levin to begin.
Thank you. I think Thomas Jefferson said that the government that governs least governs best. And so, to a great deal, home rule needs to be something that we preserve here in Oregon. When it comes to a question of something like excluding guns from the city limits, that is obviously in violation of the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and so it's a non-starter. When it comes to medical marijuana and dispensaries, I actually have started a small business called Bald Brothers. Easy to remember. And so I'm eager, in fact, to participate in what will be the legal marijuana industry, and that's why I've followed its rollout in Washington and Colorado very closely. And so I favor the Colorado model as opposed to the Washington model. Colorado has vertical integration. It has a flat, across-the-board 15% excise tax, which, if instituted here in Oregon, would raise roughly $55 million in the first year. I believe that we can govern less by having a 10% excise tax and allowing local municipalities to impose their own tax up to 5%. That way, if a local government, city government, doesn't want any dispensaries in their town, they don't have to have any. The next town over can open a dispensary, and they can reap the benefits of that tax. No one should strong-arm you into having a business in your town that you don't want. But at the same time, if we can make it financially appealing for you, then why wouldn't we do that? As far as, I believe, right-of-way was another question.
Yes.
I believe that boots on the ground, you are the people who see what your town needs more than someone in an ivory tower far away. And so whenever possible, you should be given the opportunity to govern your town, your city, your home the way you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Auer.
Yes, thank you. I do agree with local control. According to the Constitution, it's very important that we return the governance back to the local, the city, county, and state, and then federal. Regarding gun control, there's the Second Amendment that reads, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed upon." I see how the federal government there, in that amendment, is confirming state sovereign rights. We need a well-regulated militia. I don't believe we have that defined today. The governor is the commander-in-chief of the militia, which it's been amended in the Oregon State Constitution. But there is still a militia that I don't believe the National Guard is the militia according to the Constitution. So we need to make sure that we again return to the governance of what saith the Constitution and what is a well-regulated militia. And we can return to that protection there and arm thyself. Arm yourself. We all need to arm ourselves. I just spoke with a sheriff here, speaking of the medical marijuana issue. I asked, "What can I pray for you, Sheriff?" He said, "Pray that that bill does not pass, or that measure, because he believes that it's going to cause a lot more damage, crime, trouble." But here's the good news. You ready for some good news? Back in 1985, I was smoking marijuana, and the Lord was dealing with my heart, and that's when I gave the Lord Jesus Christ my life completely while I was doing that. So that's kind of an interesting thought, but we'll leave it at that. God bless
Auer,
you.
Your time is up. Thank you very much for sharing that. Representative Richardson. Amen, brother.
I want you to know, meanwhile, back at the LOC debate, as a general rule, I believe that the government that is closest to the people is most responsive to the people, and that there should only be preemption when there is a statewide reason to do it or when there's a violation of the Constitution. So in this instance, we have these 4 points. First, managing right-of-way. That's a local issue, and it should remain a local issue. Gun control. That's a constitutional issue under the Second Amendment, and so it's not appropriate for local control to be able to be doing anything that would interfere with a constitutional right of an individual. Medical marijuana dispensaries, I don't see that as being either a constitutional issue or a statewide issue worthy of preemption, so it should be one that is retained by local control, and those that want to use medical marijuana have the ability to either get it the way that they've been getting it in the past, or they can go to their closest dispensary in another jurisdiction. And then paid sick leave. Paid sick leave I don't really see as a government issue at all, although it certainly isn't a statewide issue, and so if it is to be determined, it should be determined by local jurisdictions. But I would hope that you'll be cautious and consider the consequences on very small businesses if a well-intended rule is implemented, because there are unintended consequences that can have tremendous impact on small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor?
As a general matter, I'm very supportive of maintaining local control, particularly on those issues that allow local jurisdictions to raise revenue, given the financial straitjacket that you've been put into by Measure 5 and Measure 50. So preemption should only be done where there's a clear statewide need. And let me give you just 2 examples. I do support a paid sick leave policy like the one they've passed in Eugene, but I do think that should be done at a statewide level for 3 reasons. I think it's less burdensome on small businesses, it covers all workers, and it prevents the sort of competitive disadvantage that could be created by one jurisdiction having it and one jurisdiction not having it. Now, obviously, those have to comply with existing collective bargaining agreements and be done in a way that other benefits are not reduced from the overall compensation package. The second example I would give you would be managing GMO and non-GMO agriculture. I think that clearly needs to be done on a statewide basis. We have a very robust agricultural industry that depends on non-GMO products, wheat, for example, because of international markets, and we have a very important specialty non-GMO market. So we need to figure out how they can coexist, and seeds and pollen and wind don't respect city boundaries or county boundaries. So there would be another example of where I think a statewide policy would be necessary. So let me simply say, again, in general, I'm very supportive of local control. If there are instances where I see a policy where I believe we do need a presumption, I will, in the future, as I have in the past, discuss that with you before taking any action.
Thank you. Mr. Henry?
Thank you. Okay. First off, with right-of-way, I would say that basically localities are able to impose certain fees, and that's helpful, except for, like, for instance, utility lines. If the cities and counties are imposing fees and taxes on the utility lines that exceed their ability to run a business, then that could be a problem. So there should be reasonable state limits, at least, on fees imposed. But as for right-of-way, I believe that there should be local control. Next was gun control. Basically, localities should have the ability to restrict open carry in public places and in their businesses. And then you had medical marijuana dispensaries. This is going to be irrelevant after November. And because medical marijuana, I believe, is going to pass. And when it does, what should happen is there should be, this should be run the same as the localities do for liquor laws. With sick leave, this one's a good one. I think that localities should be able to regulate and authorize, mandate sick leave, and at the same time, they should also be able to raise minimum wage, like in Seattle they've done. I believe that Portland should have the opportunity to raise a minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So question number 2 has to do with local government partnerships. The state, counties, and cities have shared responsibilities to the citizens of Oregon. Most citizens expect all levels of government to work together to address needs and issues. What do you see as the appropriate relationship between the state, cities, and counties? Describe in detail how you plan to include local government officials in your decision-making process, and would you commit to meet regularly with the League of Oregon Cities Board of Directors? So the order of candidates for this question: Mr. Levin, Mr. Auer, Representative Richardson, Governor Kitzhaber, and Mr. Henry.
I absolutely believe that the governor is the captain of the ship, and the cities, the League of Cities, are, for lack of a better word, the crew. And a good captain listens to his crew or her crew because they know that the crew is on the front line and they see problems before the captain does, and the best way to avert those problems is to listen to a crew, a good crew. I absolutely would commit to meeting regularly, not just with the Board of Directors of the League of Cities, but with the local municipality heads on a regular basis, simply because with the state of electronic communications, you no longer have to make long trips that would interrupt your ability to govern your city or my ability to run the state. FaceTime and electronic communications makes it very easy to make those meetings happen on a regular basis. I believe that you need to lead from the back, as it were, when it comes to this kind of an issue, and you need to take your lead from the people who have boots on the ground, who see the problems before you do, and you need to listen to them. I think humility is one of the most important things you can have as a governor, and I think hubris is one of the biggest pitfalls. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Auer, please.
Yes, I concur with that, in that I would meet regularly with the League of Cities, Oregon Cities, because we must listen. And as the Circuit Rider statute, it says they became the friends, counselors, and evangels to the pioneers on every American frontier. Friends, counselors, and evangels. We need to counsel together, but we must counsel with the Lord and what saith the Constitution. And even in the Oregon's organic law of the provisional government, it read, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government. Our founding fathers realized if we don't interpret the Constitution, it's holy for a religious and moral people. That doesn't exclude everybody, it includes everybody. People aren't forced to believe anything, but we need to have our liberties and freedoms recognized from the principles of liberty that come from the Scripture and the source of liberty Himself, the Lord Jesus Christ, God the Father and the Holy Spirit, and the perfect law of liberty, you see. So we need to bring counsel by seeking the Lord, asking for His guidance. Like George Washington said, you know, the first president of the United States, and when he was sworn in, he summoned for the Bible, and remember, he kissed it. First president of the United States, honored, treasured the Word of God. We need to seek the Lord in these counsel of these complex problems first, and the Lord will grant it to us as we seek Him individually and together. And so, yes, let's meet together, but let's make sure we remember the one who grants us all the wisdom. Amen.
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 Representative Richardson.
You know, as a former city councilor, I know the importance of a relationship between local government and the state government. During my 11 years in the state legislature, I've made it a point to be very close and to work close with the with the cities that are within my district. I believe a governor's relationship with local government should be that of a partnership, because when there are issues that are going to affect the citizens in local jurisdictions, those decisions should not be made without discussion with the elected representatives of those citizens. And so I think before we make decisions in legislation that will affect local government, that we should invite the LOC to the table and its members, those that would represent in different areas, and get the input so that we make fewer mistakes. I mean, how often do we pass laws in the state and then have to change them later because of the unintended consequences? I mean, one way to avoid unintended consequences is by getting input from those who will be most closely affected before you pass the legislation, instead of waiting till you hear about it afterward. I'd mentioned before the impact of unfunded mandates. That's one of those areas where if we would hear from local government as to the consequences of what we're about to do before we make changes, it would help us to avoid putting burdens on local government. To a large extent, unfunded mandates are a product of a lack of communication between local government and leaders and the legislators and the governor. We need to make sure that we have communication. That communication should take place in many different ways, using digital media, telephones, and face-to-face meetings. And as governor, I want you to know I will follow the example of Governor Vicatia and have office hours. I'll be in every county every year, and we'll meeting with as many of the cities as possible while we're making those trips. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor?
Yes, thank you. Well, intergovernmental cooperation is essential to my whole agenda for moving Oregon forward. If you look at most of our initiatives, they are based on local community-based delivery models. In education, it's the early learning hubs. In healthcare, it's the coordinated care organizations. In natural resources, it's local watershed councils. But I think our regional solution system offers the best example of intergovernmental cooperation, which brings together federal and state agencies, counties, cities, the civic sector, and the business community to deliver locally determined priorities around economic and community development. And we've got a lot to show for that. For example, we worked with Mayor Houck in Pendleton to address workforce housing issues. We worked with Mayor Endicott to ensure that Central Oregon trucking was able to expand in Redmond. Right here in Eugene, we worked with Mayor Kitty Piercy and Mayor Julie Manning of Corvallis to create the Regional Accelerator Innovation Network for the South Willamette Valley. None of these things could have happened in education, in healthcare, and natural resource management, or these county and city-specific initiatives without this kind of collaboration and partnership. So we will continue that. I am currently, and have for the last 4 years, met regularly with the Board of Directors of the League of Oregon Cities, and will continue to do so if reelected to another term.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Henry.
Well, I think this is where the steep learning curve where I talked about in my opening statement comes in. This is new for me, so it's an interesting format. I've never been faced with a room full of people like this, and cameras pointed at me, lights pointed at me. So the nervousness, I'm going to try to get away from the notes because it's very difficult for me to read. I get everything on disc. That's me. That's how I learn. I drive through the night and I listen to tapes. So anyway, I was born 9 of 12 children. I work very well with groups and teams. And I'm showing that here, I suppose. So as for a relationship with a local government, I believe in bottom-up approaches, not top-down approaches. And I would work feverishly with the city and county, local governments, to come up with what they see as a plan. I was on the Willamette Neighborhood Association for 3 years, back in 2001 to about 2004, and I dropped that to chair the State Green Party for 4 years. And on that committee, we wanted more local control for the neighborhood association away from the city. We wanted to be able to define, we wanted roundabouts, or we wanted stop signs here or there, we wanted a new park. I got 15 seconds left. So we created up a neighborhood vision. I believe that we should be working together, and it will be an interesting thing if I do get elected governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Caused a little bit of stir there. That was good. That was good. So we're going to ratchet up the learning curve a little bit and talk about tax reform, specifically measures 5 and 50. So limitations placed on property taxes by these measures have resulted in the largest source of city revenues increasing at a lower rate than the inflation in those city costs. This has prevented local government revenue-raising ability from keeping up with the costs of providing essential services to citizens. The system results in many inequities where sometimes properties in the same with the same market value will pay very different taxes in the same community. The League has 3 property tax reform proposals to empower local citizens to determine their level of service and to address some of these inequities. Those proposals are: 1, voter control referral to allow voters to consider a temporary operating levy outside of Measure 5's compression limits. 2, resetting a property's assessed value to its market value at sale. And 3, allow the option of applying a citywide rather than countywide changed property ratio to new properties so that new properties pay property taxes at the same rate as existing properties. Would you support the League's 3 property tax reform proposals? And for the proposals you support, what would you do as governor to get those proposals passed? And we're going to start with Mr. Auer, please.
Thank you. I believe across the board, at every level, we're overtaxed, we're overburdened, state, county, city. We need to remove some of this waste. And we'll get to that in the next question with transportation, but that is my response. We're just overburdened in every way. And the scripture, the Lord only requires 10% himself. Why would we require more than 10%? And so I want to yield the rest of my time to the other candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Richardson, please.
Thank you. You know, having been on a city council, I know how difficult it is to balance the budget. I mean, the resources are scarce and the expenses continue to escalate. The first issue was on voter control referral, and I support local government having the ability to make decisions. And so I certainly would support the ability for us to implement a local levy if that was decided by the people that are going to be affected by it. Regarding the resetting of the property's assessed value to its market value at sale, we need to be mindful of the negative consequences that that would have on an already fragile housing market. But there again, I think that is a decision that should be made by those that are most affected at the local level. In reality, the key source of additional city revenue is from a growing economy and more employed citizens. I don't believe that Oregon needs higher tax rates. Oregon needs more taxpayers. Oregon's unemployment rate has been above the national average every month for 18 years. I mean, we need the revenue that comes from a vibrant economy. This is an astounding thing, and we should reflect on how can we make our economy better all across the state, all aspects of our state, and not just in certain counties. In short, Oregon needs a governor who will be willing to help the economies in all aspects of the state, in all parts, in all geographical locations, in all clusters. And I will be that kind of governor. Now, how do you do that? Well, to boost agriculture, and in some of the areas, you need to have some new ideas, some vibrant chances to make change. I think that we should draw a small amount of water from Oregon's fair share of Columbia River and irrigate 30,000 more acres of farmland, which has been estimated to create 1,400 new jobs. We can do so much if we have a governor who will govern the entire state and not just the Portland region.
Amen to that.
Thank you. Governor Kitzhaber.
Yes, I think obviously this is one of the most serious issues facing local jurisdictions. Unintended consequence, I think, of both 50 and 5. The inability to keep up with your population growth and your city needs, whether it be basic critical services like public safety or infrastructure like water and sewer systems that are actually essential to attract jobs and grow businesses. So this is an issue of both public safety, economic growth, and basic equity. I think it's very reasonable to allow local jurisdictions to have an operating levy outside the compression limits of Measure 50. I think it's also very reasonable and a matter of equity that property should be reassessed at its actual market value at time of sale. And finally, I do recognize the importance, at least to me, and the equity in having existing property pay the same property taxes as new property. So the answer is I will support your efforts to address these issues. They are not going to go away. We should not underestimate the difficulty involved here because some of these require constitutional amendments. But I have worked and tried to help you get these measures on the ballot, and if we're able to get them on the ballot, you can count on my support to try to pass them.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
Thank you. On question number 1, voter control referral, I would support that. And I believe that voters should have the ability to be able to tax themselves and be able to provide services. I don't think their hands should be tied in that respect. However, question number 2, you want to reset property assessed values to its market value at sale. And that seems to me that even though the system is already, it already creates inequity the way it is, it creates even more inequity if you reset just at the sale time, at the time of sale. But if you were to have a one-time reset, I think that would create a more equitable system across the board, and then put structures in place that would help from there, so it wouldn't raise the price, the property value. Then I would say allow the option to apply a citywide rather than a countywide change. Again, with this one, I think it needs to be worked out a little bit more. Basically, if a young couple comes in and buys, then with the question number 2, it makes it inequitable for the person who purchases, the young couple that buys a house, and the time at sale, it's reset, and they're forced to pay a higher tax than the long-term homeowner, who that's going to help out quite a bit. So with this, definitely, I would work on this and other proposals with you to see that they're furthered and that they're better crafted.
Thank you. Mr. Levin, please.
Obviously, allowing a city to pass its own levy is completely necessary. You need to be able to raise the funds necessary to service the needs of your constituents, and not allowing you or tying your hands would just be a horrible idea. When it comes to resetting the value of the house, the property that is, I believe that that is a good idea in principle. However, I think that we should exempt people over the age of 65. I think a lot of times people are living on a fixed income, they're looking to sell their home and purchase a new one, and they're not going to be able to afford these exorbitant property taxes once they're increased. Obviously, this should apply only to your primary residence and not some sort of investment property. There's always the law of unintended consequences. And then finally, number 3 was, Mr. The citywide rather than countywide. I really am very wary of allowing something to happen citywide that is not happening countywide when it's happening on this scale, because you then end with a really great disparity. Oftentimes one person is living across the street from another, and one person is paying what seems to be an unfair share. So I think when it comes to this sort of implementation, I think countywide is the best way to go, and I think we should let the counties decide themselves whether or not they want to implement this kind of a reset. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The last question has to do with transportation. Oregon's road system is becoming increasingly distressed, and transportation funding is not keeping up with the basic maintenance and preservation needs. Cities and counties throughout Oregon are facing serious budget shortfalls, resulting in the deterioration of transportation infrastructure. As governor, would you support the League's proposal for a comprehensive transportation package in the 2015 legislative session to provide additional funding for state, county, and city roads? And if so, what would you do to get that measure passed? The order of candidates: Representative Richardson, Governor Kitzhaber, Mr. Henry, Mr. Levin, and Mr. Auer. Representative?
Transportation and infrastructure are central to the economic development of all parts of our state. We have hundreds of infrastructure projects that are identified and ready to go, just waiting for adequate funding from the legislature. Now, we can pass a transportation package without raising taxes by making it a higher priority when you're making your allocations toward the budget, by reemphasizing the state and federal transportation relationship between Oregon and the federal government, and by reallocating a substantial amount of the bonding capacity that we have to these kinds of projects. Our long-term goal should be to roll freight from every corner of our state to trade partners that are overseas, and to expand Oregon's exports to distant shores. From my office budget, I'll fund a new position as Lieutenant Governor who will be focused on cultivating international relationships and opening up trade offices in Oregon's top export countries. We'll need roads to support the transport of these goods. One long-term proposal that I'll be making as governor to promote exports and revitalize the coastal and rural economies of our state is the construction of a freeway from the deepwater port of Coos Bay to Burns to Ontario. We need to open up our country, our state, the rural areas, the coastal areas, in a way that will make a difference for generations to come. Now, this won't happen overnight. In fact, it may not be completed until long after I'm gone from my office as governor. But if we don't start on that path, we'll never reach that destination. We must always remember our rural cities need more than just roads. They need jobs. We need economic development proposals. We need to be able to go forward. We need vision for the future. Our roads need to lead to prosperity, not down the same path that we've been following in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor?
Clearly, we need a comprehensive package in the next legislature, and I'm assuming that's going to involve some kind of fuel tax increase. But it has to be coupled to the recognition that the gas tax is not a long-term sustainable source of funding for our roads as vehicles become more fuel efficient, as more people take mass transit. So we've got to have a longer-term vision. We have a group working right now chaired by Eugene resident and former Speaker Larry Campbell and Greg Cannon from Northwest Natural Gas that really asks, what do we want our transportation system to look like in 2025 across all modes, and how do we get there and how do we pay for it? That means looking at creative things like the vehicle miles traveled pilot we've got out there, recognizing that natural gas at $3 or $4 per billion BTU means we're going to have more compressed natural gas vehicles, probably electric vehicles. How do they contribute their fair share to the financing of the infrastructure? But longer term, we need to recognize that the federal government isn't even able to maintain the integrity of the highway trust fund, so we're going to have to look to some other source of revenue, and I believe the source is trying to figure out how to bring private institutional capital to help finance public infrastructure projects. The Oregon Infrastructure Exchange, a partnership between Oregon, Washington, and California, you can check it out online, is a very promising step in that right direction. It's modeled after Partnerships BC that has done $10 billion worth of public infrastructure projects with private institutional resources. So short term, probably some increase in fuel tax. Long term, looking at a fundamentally different way to fund our transportation system across all modes and try to develop a much more robust public-private partnership, because as Representative Richardson said, a transportation infrastructure is extraordinarily important, not just to the public sector, but to the vitality of the private sector and our economic future.
Thank you. Mr. Henry.
Thank you. Obviously, as a truck driver, the infrastructure, the roads and the bridges are pretty important to me. It's also important to me because one of the largest burdens that cities and counties face are roads. And it's very difficult to keep the entire system maintained in that sort of way. So a comprehensive package, sure. I know that when I'm out there driving and I've got a set of triples, the last thing I want to hit is snow and ice. But when I do, and I have to chain up, whether it's a long box or triples, the roads tend to be very different from one county to the next. When I'm driving along, one county, we've de-iced it. The next county, I'm experiencing ice, like instantly. And it's very dangerous, not just for me, but for the public. These are public highways. I don't see them as owned by my company. The public needs to be safe. So with that, in reading the proposal, the package, there are a few things that stand out, 3 things. First of all, an increase in the gas tax. Yes, I would support that. Yes, I'd be raising taxes on gas. But I also think that we should also increase it, not just the 5 cents that's recommended, but we should increase by 13 cents more on top of that to be more in line with California. My carbon footprint is huge as a truck driver, I understand that, but it's very highly, in my sense, socialist. I wear several hats in the political realm. I'm a green, I'm a progressive, and I'm a socialist. I believe that we need to create jobs also out on our highways and fix them. I believe that the expansion calculation is too expensive, so no, and it's also complicated. And no on funds should be available for transit. I think it should be, the funds should be available for public transit and bicycling.
Thank you. Mr. Levin, please.
Obviously, our roads are the arteries and veins through which the lifeblood of our state flows. We need to make sure that we're investing in that infrastructure as best we can, not just maintaining it, but expanding it where necessary. I've seen the traffic back up on the west side of Portland many times, and that puts a standstill to our commerce. And so it's very important to make sure that we continue to invest and that we continue to expand, and we need to find that money from multiple sources. We can't just keep reaching into the pocket of the taxpayer with a vehicle mileage tax or with a gas tax. We need to revisit the amount that we're charging for the weight per mile to the truck drivers, with all due respect to my esteemed colleague. We also need to look into alternative methods of getting the money from industrial sources such as timber and industrial hemp once marijuana becomes legal. I don't think you can understate and it will, the polling across the board. I've heard some chuckles, but the polling across the board says that it will be, and unlike my Democratic and Republican challengers,
please,
I am in
Mr.
favor of
Levin.
it. I
To the
apologize.
question. Thank you.
But I'm saying that I'm trying to answer the question by saying that I'm looking at this as a viable source of revenue, that hemp is something we will be able to grow in this state openly and make quite a bit of money from it if we're willing to say, yes, marijuana is something we should grow. Marijuana and hemp are two different plants, but you can't grow hemp while marijuana is illegal. And as long as we're willing to have the vision and the courage to say that this is something we should do, then this is an industry that we can have statewide, not just in individual counties, that will help invest in the infrastructure from the revenue that we're generating from this brand new job-creating industry. Thank you.
And Mr. Auer, thank you.
Yes, again, back to those circuit rider preachers there. These county roads, that's where we get many of our boundaries is from their circuit they established. And as a traveling minister, there might not be anybody in this room that travels as much as I do statewide. I've been to all 36 counties, and I see a lot of different places of our great state. And my own observation, not from a study or from a poll, but just my own observation, just a few years back, and I would tell my children, why are we tearing up perfectly good roads and putting in another one? I know that's not always the case, but I've seen much of that in the cities, in the counties, just roads tore up. One example there, it took 8 or 9 years south of Roseburg there, a bridge, 8 or 9 years. Built it, tore it up, built it again. That's a waste. And so we have the resources. We need to make sure that we're using them properly without this excess waste. And I do have a proposal. Some of these road workers, thank God for them, construction workers. My wife ran into a man just the other day. What's that?
Was he hurt?
Well, no, he wasn't hurt. He give me my 10 seconds back, please. Thank you, Representative Richardson. He told her 3 of his friends had died in road construction. We need to address the safety of that. And let's put some of these workers in the cities for dispensaries of guns and ammunition to protect and defend ourselves. I believe that's a higher priority than a lot of these things.
Thank you, Mr. Auer. Thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughtful responses to the 4 questions. We now have the opportunity to move into your final 3 minutes. And the order will be the same order that we started. We'll start with Mr. Henry and just proceed down and end with Governor Kitzhaber. So Mr. Henry, please. So 3 minutes.
I again thank you for letting us participate in this. For the people who didn't tune in at the beginning, Measure 90 is going to limit the voices here, and what we want to see are more voices, I'm sure. I'm seeing some nods here, definitely. So with that, Measure 90, I'm asking that you support that. Obviously, I support medical marijuana, as long as, as well as the other green. As a truck driver, I believe that we can haul hemp, I believe, in Measure 91, which is, in my view, I've seen the polling as well. I believe that's going to pass, and we need to get behind that. I think that will create jobs. It'll create small businesses in Oregon, in your towns. So also with Measure 92, there should be, if I'm eating a tomato, I want to know that it's not 50% or 10% or any percentage fish or some other mammal. So I think we should have GMO labeling. So I think those are the big ones that are the most contentious that I think should be addressed. With that, being here tonight and entering this race, this is, being a truck driver, this is like doing my pre-trip inspection. This is doing my walk around. I'm kicking the tires. I'm checking things out. But at the same time, I'm used to driving long, hard miles. I drive 500 miles a night, and it's pretty grueling. If you think about Indianapolis 500 and watch those, and I do that every night. I'm in it for the long run. I'm in school for the long run. And, I'm here for the long haul, whether I'm elected governor and I can serve in that role and wear that hat. So I think we all wear many hats. We have a legislator, a preacher, a stay-at-home dad, and the governor. You've got a truck driver. So you've got quite the selection to choose from. And I think we're just at the beginning of this, and we're going to continue on for the long haul. And it'll be interesting to see in the next few weeks. And I thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Mr. Levin.
Once again, I do greatly thank the League of Oregon Cities for having us here. I know that most debates tend to exclude third-party candidates. I've often said that being a third-party candidate is a bit like being Rodney Dangerfield. You get no respect. And so to that end, I would like to say that unlike some of my third-party colleagues, I am not a one-issue guy. I have a plan to move forward with the state of Oregon. And one of the things that I have found most distressing about this campaign up to this point is that I don't feel that we've heard a lot of new ideas or a lot of vision from the incumbent and from his challenger, who are being held up by the media as the only two choices. My friends have actually taken to calling them Mr. Burns and Mayor Quimby. And I think it's important that we bring back trust and vision to Salem. Mr. Burns is trustworthy, but he doesn't have a lot of vision. His opinion on gays and minorities and women belongs in 1914 and not 2014. And Mayor Quimby is a career politician who will take a kickback from, contribution from Phil Knight.
Mr. Levin, please. I need to interrupt you here.
Yes, sir.
This is not about the other candidates. This is about your views on the issues. Please.
Well, my views
Thank
on the
you.
issues are that I believe I am a better candidate. I am a trustworthy candidate and a candidate with vision. I am a candidate who can restore the trust that we are supposed to have in Salem, and I have new ideas like the single-payer health care system, like instituting across the board the excise tax on legalized marijuana. I believe that we're seeing a lot of the same old from the supposedly only viable candidates, and I think it's time for a credible third party to be given a shot. Thank you for your time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Auer, please.
Yes, I wanted to thank you again, League of Oregon Cities, for hosting this venue and to include all the candidates. Thank you again. And for all your participation here. And I know that we've had some fun here, and rightfully so. But these are all serious issues, very serious. They're life or death. And I am as serious as I can be in a candidate running to win. And I really believe if we do not return back to our heritage, our foundation, and our roots, how can we truly finish what they started and go in the direction that they set the course for? On the dedication of the Circuit Rider Preacher statue there, April 19, 1924, Judge Carey, the judge who presided there, here's what he said in part. The pioneer preachers, with rare self-sacrifice and devotion to a belief, typify in a degree the spiritual influences that have permeated and characterized our civilization and our social and political structure. The judge of the day, who was there he reported there on the Oregon State Convention, he was honoring these pioneer preachers. Without them bringing the Word of God into every part of life and society, he said they actually influenced, again, the spiritual influences that have permeated and characterized our civilization and our social and political structure. It is appropriate to bring governance with God and the Bible in every area of life. It's good for all citizens because it's right for all people. And so, yes, Jason Lee was the preaching statesman of Oregon. He's the George Washington of Oregon. He's the founding father of American civilization here in our great state. And I love our state. And I love you. I love these candidates here. I pray for all the people regularly because the Lord loves you. He loves us, and He's coming back. And it says there that He's going to come to execute judgment there in Jude, verse 14 and 15, with 10,000s of His saints to execute judgment. Things will be made right one way or the other. But why don't we just get it right now? And governance with the Lord. And I ask you this question, are you ready for a governor who will govern with the governor, the Lord Himself, the book of heaven, our heritage, and the Constitution? Yea or nay? God bless you. Thank you.
Representatives.
Oregon is a historic and a beautiful place. I mean, think about the challenges that were faced by our founders, those that gave us this state. Think about if it was your family 150 years ago, and you're sitting around your table, and you're thinking that you're going to go some place where you've heard about this place called Oregon. And you're going to put everything that you can carry into a wagon, and you paint on the side of it, Oregon or bust, and you start walking 2,200 miles to come to a place where you have tall timber, deep topsoil, wide rivers, and big fish. Many didn't make many died along the trail, but they came because they wanted liberty, they wanted opportunity, they wanted freedom, they wanted home rule, they wanted local control, and they established cities and towns to help organize their little societies. But those are in jeopardy today. Every day we see the move toward greater centralized control of our economy, our education system, our water, our land, and it's hurting our communities. I mean, think about the lack of accountability where $190 million gets spent on a bridge project, the Columbia River Crossing Project, where one of the governor's campaign members gets paid over $500,000 by a contractor, one of the largest contractors, on that project. And there's no accountability. There's no transparency. Oregon needs a governor who understands the benefit of local control, of honesty, trustworthiness, and transparency in government. A governor who understands the benefits of local government, a governor who has served on a city council like I have in the city of Central Point, a governor who's committed to restoring the legacy that we were given by the pioneers so many years ago. I have these qualifications, and I'm offering myself to serve as our next governor, a governor who will reboot our economy, reform our education system, and restore trust, confidence, and accountability and transparency to our state government. I ask for your support. I'm Dennis Richardson. Help me become Oregon's next governor. Thank you.
Governor, thank you.
Thank you. This race, it seems to me, is about two things. It's about values, and it's about the ability to deliver. And let me start by saying that Oregon is a vastly better place now than it was 4 years ago. And that's due largely to the fact that we did not allow the deficit, the recession, or a divided legislature tear us apart. And it's also due to leadership that was able to fight for and deliver for the state. We came together as Oregonians and took on some extraordinarily difficult tasks. We balanced the budget, balanced the books, and erased the deficit. We set out to create 25,000 new jobs a year, and we've exceeded that. We've secured huge investments in some of our largest traded sector industries, from Intel to Daimler Trucks. We've kept timber mills open in John Day and created jobs in LeGrand and in Cave Junction in Josephine County. We brought 2 data centers to Prineville. We're working on expanded irrigated agriculture in the Columbia River Basin, and we found the resources to dredge our small ports. Across this state, communities are coming together for outcomes for children. Kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading. We've added $1 billion to the K-12 system and instituted the first tuition freeze in 14 years. And 95% of Oregonians have health insurance today. Tens of thousands of them for the very first time. They don't have to choose between taking their child to the doctor or paying the utility bill. And over 1 million of them are on a new care model that's going to save the state $4 billion over the next 8 years. We have delivered for the state of Oregon, but obviously challenges remain. Our economic recovery has been spotty, leaving behind too many of our fellow Oregonians, people in rural parts of the state, communities of color, English language learners, people from generational poverty. We have more to do on education and healthcare, and obviously we've got a growing income inequality that is very, very troubling. To address those issues requires 2 things. First, it requires leadership based on values, based on the belief that we are all in this together, based on the belief that Oregon won't be a good place for any of us to live unless it's a good place for all of us to live. And second, it requires leadership that is able to bring Oregonians together and solve these problems as a community. This race is about 2 things. It's about values, and it's about the ability to deliver. I am very proud of what we've done together over the last 4 years, and I'm excited about the prospect of another 4. I'm John Kitzhaber. I'm asking for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Gentlemen, on behalf of the League of Oregon Cities, I want to thank you for giving up a better part of your Saturday to come and address the delegates here today. We really appreciate it. Please join me in thanking all of them for their support today.